Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into, well, what really feels like a bit of a microdose of global chaos.
Yeah, it does feel that way sometimes.
We're going to try and pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits from a whole stack of recent global headlines.
Exactly. The idea is to connect the dots for you between these seemingly random events, to turn, that endless doom scrolling into something more like actual understanding.
Okay, let's start with something, well, peculiar. Our sources flagged that July 9th was officially the shortest day ever recorded
Right.
by, get this, 1.6 milliseconds. Tiny.
Hmm.
But it makes you think, what do these tiny shifts actually mean? Why even track that?
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, 1.6 milliseconds obviously doesn't change your day.
Right. Not noticeably.
But these tiny, tiny fluctuations in the Earth's spin, they're tracked by hyper-accurate atomic clocks. And they tell us about really complex stuff happening, ocean tides, atmospheric pressure, things deep inside the planet. And yeah, cumulatively, it can matter for tech that needs ultra-precise time, like GPS, satellite navigation, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
It's a reminder that even the planet itself is constantly subtly shifting.
Okay, so from subtle planetary shifts to much less subtle geopolitical ones, let's talk tensions.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a big move on the trade front. Our sources are saying Trump's tariff strategy is now aimed squarely at Brazil.
Yes, I saw that.
A 50% tariff
Yeah.
on basically everything from copper to, well, cachaça. And the stated reason seems tied to how Brazil handled the court drama around ex-President Bolsonaro.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It's not just that a geopolitical spat is spilling into trade that happens,
Sure.
but using tariffs specifically because of how a country handles its internal judicial processes, that feels like a new level. It sort of weaponizes trade based on domestic legal issues.
Blurring the lines.
Exactly. It potentially blurs that line between national sovereignty and global economic leverage. It could be setting a really different kind of precedent for how countries try to influence each other.
And staying on geopolitics, but shifting to rhetoric. There was quite the exchange, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. The Trump-Putin back and forth.
Our source described it pretty bluntly, Trump using some very strong, dismissive language, calling Putin full of, well,
Right. Strong stuff.
And Putin's response was described as this sort of global equivalent of an emoji smirk, almost dismissive in its own way. Meanwhile, NATO is apparently just watching carefully, like the source says, the substitute teacher in the back.
While it might sound like playground stuff, this public rhetoric is often highly calculated in diplomacy.
You think so? Even this?
Oh, absolutely. These exchanges shape global perceptions of strength, of alliances, of who's willing to push boundaries. It's signaling, really. High-stakes signaling without, direct confrontation. It tells you a lot about the underlying power dynamics and strategies at play.
Okay, shifting gears to the economy, China. The reports say its factories are seeing more deflation.
Yeah, prices dropping, and
Yeah.
faster than analysts expected.
So what does that signal, deflation, in a huge manufacturing hub like China?
Well, fundamentally, sustained deflation, falling prices usually signals weak demand. Either people aren't buying or there's just too much stuff being made. Oversupply.
Right.
And if China, the world's factory floor basically, is slowing down persistently, that has ripple effects. Big ones. It can impact global supply chains, production costs everywhere, even consumer prices in other countries, because it reduces overall global purchasing power. It suggests something fundamental might be shifting in demand or output there.
And then, starkly, the climate impact.
Oh.
Europe, the reports are brutal.
Yeah. Having a heat stroke is how one source put it.
And the figure, 2,300 heat-related deaths, that number just stops you.
It's a devastating human cost. And it goes beyond just bad weather. It really highlights quite starkly the vulnerabilities in, say, urban planning, public health systems across Europe.
Are we prepared?
Well, that's the question it forces us to ask, right? Are the current strategies, the emergency responses, really enough for what seems to be an accelerating reality? Or is this, the start of a more frequent kind of public health crisis linked to climate, demanding a whole rethink of how prepared we actually are?
Okay, one last piece here. A diplomatic head-scratcher, maybe?
Go on.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Besson skipped the G20 summit in South Africa.
Right, a major global economic forum.
Yeah, and went instead to Japan's Expo. Just hung out there, as the source put it.
That choice is quite telling. It really makes you think about shifting priorities in diplomacy right now.
What does it suggest?
Well, it suggests that perhaps the traditional hierarchy of these big global gatherings like the G20 might be less compelling than specific, maybe more targeted bilateral or regional opportunities. What drives high-level attendance? Maybe it's shifting towards immediate strategic or economic interests, like those potentially highlighted at Japan's Expo, over the broader multilateral stage of the G20. It could signal a strategic reweighting, of where diplomatic energy is best spent right now.
So when you pull back, milliseconds shaved off the day, tariffs linked to court cases, sharp words between leaders, deflation signals from China, a tragic heatwave toll, and unexpected diplomatic priorities.
Yeah.
It really does paint a picture of a world interconnected in complex, sometimes unpredictable ways. Each event feels like a tremor in this larger, constantly shifting system.